make sure that that program doesn't contain controversial subjects, and you're not impolite to people.
No, definitely not, Dad. You know me. I'm never, ever controversial or impolite.
Yeah. Okay.
Welcome to Conversations with your lovable, never pisses anyone off, never been banned from Facebook or YouTube, never been sabotaged or censored for politely expressing a difference of opinion, ex-Muslim host Aina, keeping it non-controversial. This is episode 8, and today I'm speaking with Sohail Ahmed, former Salafi Islamist, now gay activist. He also appeared on an excellent BBC Three documentary called Gay and Under Attack, specifically about the gay ethnic minority experience. You can find him on Twitter at Sohail Pakbrit, SohailPakbrit. Hi, Sohail.
Hi.
How's it going?
It's going great. Pleasure to be here.
It's lovely to have you here. I know we've tried a couple of times and just kept missing each other.
Yeah, unfortunately. Apologies for that.
No problem. So finally we get to speak to each other.
Yes, finally.
How's it going?
It's going great. I'm doing well. Just waiting to go back to university, and I'm just preparing for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go back as in you're out now for the year?
Yeah, I'm taking a year out at the moment for kind of health reasons like anxiety and stuff. But right now what I'm doing is just spending my time doing activism work. So just a few days ago, I took part in a Quilliam panel on LGBT rights in Islam, and I just argued for an LGBT positive interpretation of Islam. Peter Tatchell was there, and a few other people were there as well.
That's awesome that you're using your free time like that, and I hope it ends up being a great year for you, and that when you go back, you're ready to take on the world.
Thank you.
So tell me about how do you identify, like a cultural Muslim, ex-Muslim?
I identify as a cultural Muslim. Initially, I identified as an ex-Muslim. I just wanted to distance myself from Islam. I was everything but Islam or everything but Muslim.
Right.
But that was when I was quite anti-theist in my thinking, which I think is perfectly fine and perfectly reasonable being an anti-theist. But then after that, I kind of changed my mind. I just kind of started going back to started praying again, but
really?
I don't believe that anyone's hearing me, right? But the mosque that I was going to was it's kind of like a pop-up mosque, and women and men pray together, and women and men both lead the prayers. So it's absolutely brilliant, and it's also open to LGBT people. So I just kind of pray, like not believing that anyone hears me, but just more to take part in the communal ritual.
So just like a meditative kind of
basically, I
connection
treat it as like
to your background.
Exactly, and a connection with my community, with like the progressive Muslim community.
So I guess you're not really a practicing Muslim. You're not really a theist.
No, I don't believe in Islam. But
you don't identify as an ex-Muslim.
No, I don't identify as an ex-Muslim. I identify rather as a cultural Muslim. But I do make it clear that I don't believe in Islam.
That's really interesting. Yeah. So why not ex-Muslim?
Yeah, well, I was speaking to someone about this. I was identifying both as ex-Muslim and cultural Muslim at one point. And
right, because I was looking you... Excuse me. I was looking you up, and I found you identifying as both, and I was a bit confused. And just a little note for my listeners, apologies, I'm recording on 2 consecutive days battling the tail end of a cough and cold, so apologies if I sound strange or sniffly and coughy. Anyways, do continue.
I identified initially as both ex-Muslim and cultural Muslim, but then someone I spoke to said, well, if you identify as one, like ex-Muslim and cultural Muslim are the same thing, she said, essentially, but they're trying to present a very different political message. And then I kind of thought about that and thought, what's the political message I want to send out? Is it the one attached to ex-Muslim, or is it the one attached to cultural Muslim? And then I realized, actually, I'd rather identify as a cultural Muslim.
Interesting. So how do you think the messages are different?
Well, I think with ex-Muslim, it's kind of you're trying to emphasize what's wrong with Islam, in terms of like, actually, I'm not identifying with my former label as a Muslim. However, with me, I'm actually identifying with my former belief. I'm identifying with it as an identity,
like,
but purely as an identity.
Right? Between having a connection and not a connection, like, and rejecting that connection.
Yeah, exactly. It's, even though you can still have a connection, calling yourself an ex-Muslim, it's just the message you're sending out is like slightly different.
Right. No, I think I agree. I agree with you totally. And,
they have different connotations.
Yeah, I think at certain points in my life, perhaps I have identified as a cultural Muslim, but for me now, it's more important to emphasize the X part because I guess it's so taboo and so dangerous that to me it's important to say that I reject this. But at the same time, I understand that need to want to connect with the community. And, you know, I write a blog that started off mainly geared towards a Pakistani audience. It was about sexuality, and it was really the only sex blog telling stories of Pakistanis. And I tried to keep my distaste for religion really at a minimum there, really focusing on sex and the stories that I was writing, but it became harder and harder to kind of include these stories about sexuality and not include the root cause, which is the discrimination based on religion usually, and the oppression towards women, LGBT, based on religion. But I guess, and that's when I started saying that this is important. So what I'm basically saying is that I relate with both those things. People always tell me that if I've abandoned the religion, then I should abandon my culture, and that really annoys me.
Yeah, because I mean, even if you've kind of abandoned the religion, you've stopped believing, you can't extricate yourself from your background.
Absolutely not.
You're still part of that.
Exactly.
Just like people are maybe cultural Jews or cultural Christians. Like, people will get confused about cultural Muslim. But if you say cultural Jew or cultural Christian, they completely understand that. And that's like a double kind of standard there.
Yeah.
But even identifying as ex-Muslim, you still connect with your former Muslim identity.
And I want to. It's always going to be a part of me. I face anti-Muslim bigotry too, because my name, my birthplace on my passport, everything, indicates that I'm Muslim. There's no spot for me to put ex-Muslim, or no way for people to identify me as ex-Muslim if they're just looking at me. So
exactly.
I think fighting anti-Muslim bigotry is a part of my struggle as well. And, celebrating things like Eid with family holidays and just connecting to that part of the good stuff, I'd love to keep that.
You can kind of like take a religion and say, well, actually, all of these mythical beliefs, that's bad. And all of these kind of like really bad injunctions, like we can disregard them, but we can take like the kind of festival celebrations, we can take the kind of like the common communal rituals, we can kind of take the good stuff from it, not as like in a kind of like a way that is like perhaps detrimental to the religion, but respecting it. I
don't know if I'd go as far as respect, but
I think that's the difference between you and I. So
perhaps,
I would probably because what I do, I also study Islam.
Oh, okay.
So I've been studying it pretty much my whole life as a Muslim, and then when I became an ex-Muslim, my interest didn't wane. Like it just kind of increased further. So like I still study Islam. And I really do enjoy studying it. I might even kind of take it up, studying it academically at university at one point. But it's I find it fascinating, and kind of like I have that kind of respect because it is rich. There is a rich intellectual tradition there hidden, like amongst all of the crazy stuff. So yeah, that's where I say that's why I'd say that I do respect it as well.
Okay. Yeah, totally. I can respect your desire to respect it, I suppose. I can't I can't identify with respecting it myself because I don't know, I still haven't I can't let go of the fact that it wants me dead. So,
exactly. That is a very serious problem.
Right, and as a woman, like when I walk into mosques, I feel offended by being pushed to the back.
Yeah, exactly. The whole stick the women at the back, put them into the broom closet kind of thing. That's why I kind of I didn't attend the kind of the equal rights mosque where women and men pray together.
That's so great. I totally support that kind of effort to find a space within the scripture or whatever to make things better. Like
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like while we may disagree, or someone that truly believes in scripture and we may disagree on a very fundamental, basic level if we get into these, theological debates. But on the whole, on the surface, I support their struggle to take it to a more liberal place, I suppose.
Exactly. That's the thing, because with Islam, most Muslims believe in a very classical, traditional interpretation of Islam. So they believe in the interpretation of Islam that was put forward by the four main imams of Islam, the four main madhabs. So basically, those interpretations are terrible. They're terrible. So it's really bad with women. It's really bad with LGBT people. But there are kind of other interpretations and other understandings of Islam, liberal, progressive interpretations.
There are, excuse me. The one thing that gets to me, though, about those is the denial that Islam is not homophobic. It's just misinterpreted. Islam is not violent. It's just misinterpreted.
This is the issue that I find with people. So I'm in I study progressive Islam and liberal Islam, and I took part in that Quillian panel the other day, as I mentioned earlier, and I was arguing for an LGBT positive interpretation. Now the issue that I find with progressive Muslims is that the believing progressive Muslims is that they say, well, no, Islam doesn't have these LGBT negative interpretations. They kind of deny it all.
Or that Islam is feminist. Oh, that drives me crazy.
Exactly. What we need is that actually we need people to say, there are these interpretations. The overwhelming majority of Muslims believe in these anti-feminist, anti-LGBT interpretations. However, there are these other interpretations which most Muslims don't believe in, at least not yet, but we're trying to push them.
Right, at least accept the plausibility.
Exactly. People need to accept that most Muslims don't believe in this stuff yet.
Yeah, if you deny the plausibility of all awful interpretations and only push the really, unheard of positive interpretations, that's just going to come across as dishonest.
Yeah, because that's just apologism.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. And I read an article that you wrote for Gay Star News. I'm just going to read a quote from it. I am of the view that the Islamic texts and scriptures have within them the flexibility to espouse an LGBT positive ethos. Much good work being done by reformist and liberal Muslim activists and scholars on this very issue. We need to support their work. Denying that there's a problem in the Muslim community has a deleterious impact on the work of these reformers. The best way we can help them is by acknowledging and accepting there are deep problems within Muslim communities when it comes to views regarding tolerance and equality. I think that really kind of nails it.
Yeah,
you got to own that conversation. You got to own the fact that there is a problem if you want to fix something.
Exactly.
There will never be anything reformed or fixed if you keep denying there's a problem in the first place.
Yes.
And then... Sorry, continue?
Yeah, because how on earth are you supposed to fix a problem if you don't, in the first place, admit that there is a problem to begin with?
Exactly. Exactly. So that's why, that really stuck out to me. We need to make public opinion shift, and it is possible. I agree with you there. Slavery is permissible in Islam, and we've made public opinion shift on that. Not many people saying that it's okay to have slaves now.
See, the thing is, with me, before I left Islam, I became a really progressive liberal Muslim.
Right.
And to kind of give you some background, like I was a Salafi to begin with. I was a
Right.
Wahhabi, right? So I read the text literally. Now, I was convinced by these progressive interpretations of Islam. And if I kind of went through with you, and I won't do that now, but if I did go through with you the progressive interpretations and the logic behind it, you would most likely find it convincing. I found it very convincing as well. So the issue is that these interpretations are convincing. I think, in my view, they are. Now, it depends on how you interpret.
Well, for someone who doesn't believe in religion, it's not really convincing, I guess, because
yes, I agree with that, because I think Muslims approach the texts with the axiomatic belief that Islam is true, right?
Yeah.
So they have to reconcile the texts with logic and reason. So they have to reconcile those two. However, us lot, the ones that don't believe in Islam, we don't have to do that, because we don't approach it with the axiomatic belief that Islam is true.
Mm-hmm.
The only axiomatic belief we approach the Quran with is that reality is true, right? The universe around us is true. That's the only axiomatic belief we approach the text with. So we don't have to believe it. For us, it's possible to not believe, to reject the texts. But for Muslims, that's not possible.
Right. So they have to find a way within the text.
Exactly. Yeah. So to them, it's far more, these progressive interpretations are far more convincing. However, I think for me, what I find is that it depends on how these interpretations are done. If you interpret it by placing them within a socio-historical context and, trying to aim for the higher objectives, equality within Islamic law, if you're trying to approach it from that perspective, it is convincing. But if you kind of try to say, oh, but beat doesn't mean beat, as in the verse, it means something else. Those interpretations, I don't find them convincing.
Yeah.
To be honest with you. It depends on how you do them.
Okay, so what is one convincing, more positive interpretation of the wife-beating verse?
So the wife-beating verse, one way you can interpret that is by saying that, because this was it's recorded in the hadith. So what was happening is that the women were going up to Muhammad and were saying, well, our husbands are doing X, Y, Z to us. We need more rights. So, Muhammad would give them more rights. And then Umar, the companion of Muhammad, would then go up to Muhammad and say, well, you know what? These women are getting way too many rights. This is getting a bit worrying. So he would argue for men to have more rights, right? So there was this dynamic that Muhammad was dealing with. And what happened is that at one point, a woman approached Muhammad and said, well, my husband hit me. Can I hit him back? And then basically, this is in the hadith goes, is that the verse was then revealed saying, you can beat your women. You can beat your wives. And interestingly, the hadith then narrates that Muhammad said in response, Allah wanted something else, and I wanted something else.
Now, so he's just going by what Allah wants.
If you
he doesn't want to allow wife beating.
Yeah, if you interpret this literally, Muhammad now is saying that I disagree with God. I don't like what God is saying. That's blasphemy if you interpret that literally. And that's how Salafis interpret it. And that's problematic. But you can interpret this in another way and say, actually, what Muhammad was referring to was the higher objectives that the Sharia is trying to aim at, the end goal that it's trying to aim at, the end goal being equality between men and women. And that this injunction that men can beat their wives was only as a temporary measure.
But so where does it say temporary?
The argument goes like this. This is what the argument that you're trying to push forward. You're trying to say that actually the Sharia is attempting to reach these end goals, right? But it's doing that slowly. You can't change everything immediately. This evidence is given in support of this theory. And the evidence is that when Muhammad invaded Mecca, he entered Mecca and he said, if the people weren't so attached to this Kaaba, I would have destroyed the Kaaba and I would have rebuilt it upon its original foundations. Because originally the Kaaba was oval in shape. It wasn't cube. right? So now basically what Muhammad is saying is that what we should be doing is rebuilding the Kaaba on the original foundations. That's the end goal that we're trying to reach.
See, to me,
But
that just gets really long-winded, and there's
exactly,
no convincing argument for justifying that verse.
Exactly. This is the issue. The Salafis, the Wahhabis, have it a lot easier. They're far more convincing. That's why so many people are becoming radicalized, because it's really convincing. You read the stuff literally.
So how were you like born into this like Salafi Wahhabi family, or?
Yeah, I was born into it. So I was born into it. I was brought up with it. I didn't really have a choice.
Oh, that's so sad. I'm sorry to
Yeah.
hear it. And then how did you start to how did you go from a Salafi, and I heard you say that you even considered carrying out attacks in the UK. How do you go from that position to becoming a gay activist? How did that unraveling begin?
The unraveling began with doubts about, the whole stoning people to death and chopping off people's heads for leaving Islam. And, it's throwing gay people off the roof. That just seemed inhumane to me. It just seemed wrong on a very human base level. And I just realized, well, you know what? This is really causing me a lot of problems internally. It just feels wrong whenever I kind of try to argue for these things.
At that point, did you know that you were gay, or did you identify as gay? Did you understand that you were gay?
I didn't know. I didn't identify as gay. I knew that I had attractions towards other guys.
Because I remember you saying that you denied it for a very long time. You didn't even consider being gay an option. You didn't know it was a thing. Like, you didn't...
Yeah, exactly. I didn't know that it was a thing, that it was like a state of being, that you could actually be gay. I just thought, oh, you know what? I have these attractions. I'm really straight, and I just need to get rid of these attractions because I'm possessed, or my internal nature has been, skewed. I kind of rationalized it to myself that way. I
mean, it's sad, really, how it can twist a person. How much turmoil must it have caused inside to be battling this? I can only imagine. It sounds funny in retrospect. Now that you're out of all of that, you thought you were really straight, ha ha ha. But just putting myself in the moment of trying to experience what you must have been experiencing, it just seems like it would have been pure torture.
Basically, I really believed that I was evil, that, I was the work of the devil, that there was something wrong with me, that somehow I had, that I was gay because I deserved it as a punishment because of something I'd done previously. So I really believed that there was something wrong with me. And imagine, sorry.
No, I hope it's not contagious.
Yeah. No, it isn't.
Via Skype.
Via Skype. So I really believe that there was something wrong with me. Now imagine if someone was telling you every single day that you woke up and every day that you went to sleep, someone said, you're evil, you're disgusting, there's something wrong with you. Now imagine that person who's saying that to you is yourself. You really believe in what you're saying to yourself. That's how it was. I really believed that there was something wrong with me.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. And how do you respect a religion that makes you feel that way?
Exactly. It is for that reason that I fully and 100% fully support people that are anti-theist and people that don't respect religion. I fully support them, and I'm fully behind them because it makes sense. It makes sense to hate religion. I personally don't hate religion at the moment. Because I think there are interpretations of religion that are good, but the ones that aren't good, the when it comes to Islam, the formulation of Islam that the majority of Muslims follow, I hate. Right. I do not respect that, and I'll be clear about that. Form of Islam most Muslims follow is not. They say moderate. It's not moderate because the issue is that when Western audiences hear the word moderate Muslim or moderate Islam, what you're doing is that you're comparing that to moderate Christianity. They're not similar at all.
No,
because when you're saying moderate Islam, you're saying Islam relative to the Muslim community. Right.
I think even moderate Muslims would be like pretty hardcore if you put them into a Christian world.
Exactly. Compared to them, they're pretty hardcore.
Yeah.
So I'm always clear that I do not respect kind of the form of Islam that most Muslims follow, and I'm not going to like make any kind of excuses for that.
Right. I mean, I don't call myself an anti-theist. It's not my favorite word at all. I mean, I understand anti-theism and I understand being against that, and I guess I am. But to actively, to be, I don't know, the word anti-theist, it focuses on the ists, not the ism. So I don't want to be someone that is just anti all theists.
Yeah.
You know, even though that is really not how most of the anti-theists I know are. They're more anti-theism, but I just don't like the term. Anyways, that's a small side note. I am against theism, but I guess I'm not that actively trying to tell people to ditch their religion. If I think it's more effective if they find a space within, rather than trying to get everyone to apostatize.
Yeah, I'll level with you. I personally think people should ditch their religion, even though I respect
If it was
Islam.
a perfect world, absolutely, I think everyone
exactly,
should. But
exactly, because it's not true. The idea that
strategically, though, how likely is it that you're going to get everyone to do that? I don't think so.
Yeah, exactly, because it's religion it's like a drug. Basically, it's
comforting.
You feel a high. In Islam, they refer to it as the sweetness of iman. That's what they refer to that feeling of high that high that you get, and it's really addictive.
Mm-hmm. So then you also, at the same time, when you came out as gay, you also came out as ex-Muslim at that time, around that time.
Yes, exactly.
And that double having to come out must have been quite difficult.
It was difficult, and basically pretty much all of the friends that I had because I was involved with the Islamic Society at Queen Mary at the university I attend, and basically pretty much everyone there just stopped talking to me immediately.
Oh.
Immediately, all of them just turned their backs on me.
That is awful.
Yeah, exactly. So it was pretty much like what happened is that at that stage when I came out as both gay and as ex-Muslim, all of my friendship circle just completely changed. But I gained a lot of friends that day. Just that one day, I gained a lot of friends because a lot of people messaged me and said, "Wow, I really respect you. I want to meet you," etc. Things like that. But I mean, I'm in a really good place now. But at that moment in time, it was really terrible. And I had some really good friends, a few good friends that stuck by me. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so sorry you had to go through that. I can't imagine. I mean, on a smaller scale, I did lose some friends when I came out as atheist, even though I was already out as a non-believer. It was just that step to atheist. That was a lot for some people to handle.
Yeah.
But it's nothing in comparison to what you went through.
And I'm sorry that you had to go through that. The thing is that a lot of people always ask, like, did you leave religion because you're gay? And that is a completely reasonable question to ask because it makes sense, right? But actually, interestingly, in my case, it wasn't, because I became a really progressive liberal Muslim before I left Islam.
That just triggered like the pathway to questioning and...
I don't know, because the thing is, when I was questioning religion, I didn't accept myself as gay. Like, the idea that I was gay didn't even cross my mind.
But you knew you had gay, I guess, attractions.
I knew that I was attracted to other guys, but I was convinced that I was still straight.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah. I get a lot of emails for my blog that I was telling you about from young Pakistani men who are convinced that they're straight, and they actually come off as a bit homophobic, but they're basically telling me that they feel attractions to other guys, but they hate gay people. So
I was in that exact situation.
Yeah, it's very tough. I don't even know what to say sometimes. Like, there was this one guy who's... no. This was a link that I saw on Craigslist. Someone sent it to me. It was like a Muslim guy who had put an ad out for just meeting men with a picture of himself and his face blurred, I think. And he only wanted like circumcised dicks or whatever, but he's like, I'm not gay or anything.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not gay, and it's Ramadan, so I totally want to keep it like, you know, halal with a Muslim guy, and I'm only attracted to Muslims. But I'm not gay. Like, he kept doing that in his like personal ad that he was looking for sex in.
Yeah, that
Very
sounds a lot like
strange.
me. That sounds like I think that's a really good representation of where I was at psychologically. I really believed I was straight. Like it's really difficult to. How can you be attracted towards other guys and
But
really
you're
believe
at the
that you're
same
straight?
time putting an ad out for gay sex, but you're believing you're straight.
Exactly. It's ridiculous. This is what kind of like religion can do to you, and this is why religion is pernicious. I think because even if you have very progressive liberal interpretations, right, and you don't have those problems, it's still the principle, you know, the idea that you believe in something without there being evidence. That I have a problem with, and that's why I kind of think that I think in the best world, everyone wouldn't believe in religion, but unfortunately, we don't live in a world like
Right.
that.
Unfortunately.
Yeah,
Someday, maybe.
yeah, maybe someday. I do think that we will get to a stage where most people won't believe in religion,
I hope
but
so.
maybe we'll have a cultural attachment to it. You know, to kind of
like just
because
keep.
people still have that attachment.
Well, you see with Christmas as well. Like, it's a pretty secular holiday. It's not really. It's lost the religion aspect. You know, in a big way. At least in Canada, it has. But it's still around. I mean, people still like it culturally.
Yeah.
Right? And if we can get there for Eid, I'd love that.
Yeah, exactly. I think that would be brilliant. Kind of going back to what I was saying before, when it kind of came to my sexuality, I became a really progressive liberal Muslim, and then what I did is that I researched sexuality in terms of like the scientific research that had been done on it, like in genetics, in studying hormones during childbirth, all of that stuff. And I realized, wait, being gay is a thing, firstly. 2, is completely natural. And 3, you can't change it. When I realized those things, I then kind of started researching LGBT, like positive interpretations of Islam, and I found them convincing. So I was really happy to be Muslim, and I was really happy to be gay. I was like really happy with both, and I was fine with both. But then after I became really progressive and liberal, at this stage, I had now accepted that anyone can go to heaven, atheists, people who didn't believe in religion, or everyone could, if you're good, you could go to heaven. So then once I got there, I wasn't afraid to kind of look outside religion, to kind of question religion, the whole concept of religion and the whole concept of God. Because at that, I'm studying physics now, and I had just gone into physics then. So then I started asking myself, well, is it possible in terms of the physics that we have now for the universe to have come into existence without there having been a creator? And then I kind of realized, wait, actually, it is plausible. That idea is plausible in terms of the physics. And that's when I kind of left the religion and I said, I don't believe in religion anymore. And and that's when I became ex-Muslim.
So, I mean, it sounds like it was a gradual process and it took different steps and different stages. And that's how it happens. I think it doesn't just happen overnight, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
You one night you're Salafi and the other you're an atheist. Like,
yeah, exactly.
But when you say that you were really happy being in that place where you were both Muslim and gay,
yeah,
as much as that baffles me and confuses me, but I fully support that. There's so many people in that position, and more power to them. If this is what they want, I don't understand why they'd want to belong to a religion that doesn't accept them. But if somehow they can reconcile that and justify that to themselves, then that's fantastic and good for them. And that's the kind of thing that's going to change Islam. Different types of people identifying as Muslim.
Exactly. That's the thing. What happens with religion is that it kind of, the tentacles grab a hold of you, and it's really difficult to get out of it. And what happens is that there's going to be a lot of gay people out there, that are going to be that they're going to be gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, or genderqueer, whatever, what have you. They're going to have these identities. They're going to be these people, but they're not. One thing that they can't do, they just can't do, is leave religion. So for them, Islam needs to create a space for them.
Right, and it's not easy. It's not easy to leave behind everything you've ever known, your community, and just, it's a step that not everyone can take, and sometimes people just need their space to figure that out and see where they're going. Maybe they will take it in the future, but then to hound them at that moment that you can't be both, I think is very unfair. I saw a lot of that during that documentary. Remember Muslim drag queens? Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw that. The Quillian panel that I took part in. Asif Qureshi.
Yeah.
So Asif Al-Lahore, the Muslim drag queen that was in that, she was on the same panel.
Oh, awesome.
So I was on the panel with her. And the reason why I'm doing this kind of work is because, LGBT Muslims need a space. They need to accept themselves.
Exactly.
Or else they're going to be going through what I went through, believing that they're evil and disgusting.
And I thought that documentary was great because it embraced that there was a problem, but it also showed that you can create your own space to be you, But the two types of people that I saw opposing it were Muslim bigots who were saying you can't be both, and anti-Muslim bigots who were saying you can't be both, so you should leave your religion. Neither of which I thought was being reasonable or fair or helping to change Islam for the better. Again, it's not a position I understand because I find it contradictory, but I still support it, if that makes any sense.
That makes perfect sense.
So, I'd like to encourage everyone to do that rather than oppose people for being gay and Muslim. But so how was it like at home when you came out as gay?
Well, what happened is that I first came out as not believing in Islam. So I said, I'm not even sure if Islam is true anymore. Ooh. And immediately my parents kicked me out. Right? So they kicked me out of the house. So I was like, I didn't have anywhere to stay. I stayed in like the cheapest hotel I could find. And you were
like young, I imagine.
Yeah, I was. No, this is actually just like 2-3 years ago.
But you're in university still. So you're pretty young,
So I was at university, and so what happened is that I stayed in like the cheapest hotel I could find for a day, and then what happened is that my parents called me. They'd found out that. What they'd done is that my dad had looked at my internet history using the Wi-Fi to see where I'd gone. And whilst he was looking at the internet history, he found that I'd been like accessing other sites as well. And then they noticed that they realized that I was gay from that. And
it's funny that they actually acknowledged that because I had a gay Muslim friend once, and he didn't know how to broach the topic with his family. I guess they were kind of open-minded enough that he considered it. But one time his mom found gay porn on his computer, and he was like standing in the back room thinking, oh, okay, well, now she knows, so I don't have to worry about how to bring it up. She's like, oh, no, look at how did this gay porn like automatically download itself onto my poor son's computer? Like, the denial is intense. Like, even after seeing the proof, she wasn't willing to accept it. Like, how did this porn download itself on your computer? You poor dear boy.
That's brilliant. Oh, wow. Yeah, like when I told my parents, like when they'd seen the porn and they'd seen that I'd accessed it, they called me back home and they said, well, you're not gay. You're not gay. For the next 2 months that I stayed at home, they said, you're not gay. And they said the reason you're not gay is because we're your parents. We would have noticed. We would have seen a sign, but we saw nothing. So they were really convinced, like they really believed that I'm not gay. And
right,
even
so
now,
they would know better than you, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. And what they said is that the only way that we're going to let you stay in this house is if you agree to be exorcised.
What?
And
this is in England in the 2000s.
Exactly in the 21st century.
Wow.
And I didn't have anywhere to go, so I reluctantly agreed. I said, "Okay, yes, I'll agree to be exercised." And I had to go through that.
What was that like?
it was terrible. Like imagine that you rationally know that there's nothing wrong with you, that there's no such things as demons.
Right. It's humiliating for
Yeah, yeah,
one.
yeah. It's absolutely humiliating and degrading. But like I knew that rationally there was no such thing, that I wasn't, that I wasn't gay because I'm possessed, that possession wasn't real. But on a very human level, like on an emotional level, because I was completely surrounded by all of that and I was in the midst of it,
Hmm.
I started really thinking to myself, wait, maybe I am possessed, on a very
Oh,
emotional level. And that really messed with my head.
of course.
Even when I was going through the exorcism, at one point I really felt this strange urge, which even today I can't fully understand. I felt this really strange urge to completely start acting out and screaming and stuff. You know how like people act when you watch those videos of
Right,
exorcism.
but it's kind of that expectation in your mind maybe built up from before that
Yeah,
you've seen it. It's that like this is what happens. Maybe this is what's
exactly,
meant to happen, you know?
exactly. And I felt that really strange urge, and I actually had to physically stop myself from doing. I had to keep my body still. Like I'd actually like focus on my body to keep it still to like stop that from happening. And it was really like really strange, and it was really terrible because I became like really suicidal and depressed.
Right, and it's also
I
just
was
brainwashing you in that instance. There's people surrounding you saying God knows what, doing God knows well, Satan knows what, but this this idea that you're possessed, you could just easily for that moment just be internalizing it. As you said, it was messing with your head. That that alone could be enough to cause you to scream and shake uncontrollably,
exactly, exactly.
and they would take it as proof of something.
Exactly. And imagine like you're screaming and shaking and stuff. You'd probably think, wait, this is happening because I am possessed. You
Mm-mm.
know,
Yeah.
it's really it's really messed up. It's really messed up. So I became really suicidal and stuff. And that's when I eventually decided that actually, you know what, I have to leave home because I can't stay here anymore because I probably won't survive. Because I'll probably end up killing myself if I stay here any longer. And that's when I kind of moved to where I live now at the moment.
Okay. And are you in touch with your family? Are things better or
Well, went back and saw them. Went back to the house like two times. It really ended up terribly. Like there was fights going on, and since then I haven't seen them, and I haven't spoken to them.
have
So
they
I haven't
heard that
spoken to them.
you've been doing media and stuff?
I think they must know. They must know, but they haven't contacted me. So I haven't been in touch with them for a year and a half now.
And what if, like, they're really, what if they could be pissed? Like, do you feel like you could be in danger at all? Or,
I think they probably are really pissed off. But in terms of danger and stuff, I think I'm safe. Although initially I did feel really fearful for my safety, but I think I'm like okay with it now.
okay, I really hope so. But,
Yeah,
be careful. And
will do.
I'm glad that you're out of there. And do you
Yeah.
have any siblings or anyone that you're in touch with?
No, I'm not in touch with any of my
None
siblings
of,
because yeah, yeah. I'm not sure if it's because they don't want to talk to me or if because the thing is the household that I come from is really controlling. So like they're like really under lockdown as well. So it's going to be really difficult for them
oh,
to get in
that's
touch with
so
me.
awful to hear. I mean, and are they all younger than you?
They're all younger than me, yeah. So I'm the oldest.
Well, at least you've kind of shown them that there's a way out and it's possible to
Yeah.
get out. So if they ever experience that, they can find you, or I hope.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the reasons that I do public stuff is because if they ever want to get in touch with me, they can easily get in touch.
Yeah. I hope so. I'm really kind of speechless and sad to hear how awful this has been.
Mm.
And yeah,
See, this is the thing. I don't want this to happen to any other kind of young Muslim LGBT person.
it's so
And that's
important that
why,
you speak out
yeah,
about it. Thank you so
exactly.
much. Yeah.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Um, yeah, what do I say from here? I'm
Yeah.
really like I'm at a loss. I'm at a loss for words. Okay. Tell me about considering carrying out attacks in your birth country.
Yeah, that's interesting because basically I was brought up in a really kind of Salafi household, right? So I was taught that the United Kingdom is the enemy, and that all the kuffar the non-Muslims, they all want to destroy Islam and they want to kill Muslims, right?
This is so strange to me because this is the country that has cared for you and housed you and been your home since you were born. How can you be told it's the enemy? Like, this is so strange to me. Every time I hear about, some extreme version of British Islam seems like a frightening thing from far away.
It is
even growing up in Saudi, I have to say, when we had family friends come visit us from England, it was like, what on earth? Those girls were always burqa'd. The people we knew in Saudi were not, unless the state demanded it when we were leaving our compounds. But these girls, by choice, there was one family friend who came, she refused to shake hands even with women because she just didn't want to, like, touch anyone.
Wow.
It's like more extreme than extreme.
That British Islam is terrifying. There's a reason why they call the French security service is dubbed Londonistan. Londonistan. So it's like there's a reason for that, because like you'll find all kinds of Islamists in the UK. I was basically brought up with that, and I really believed that. I was never taught anything else.
But you didn't wonder, like, hey, like, I guess it's really hard for me to understand because I've never been in that position. How is this country that's been my home my enemy? Like, that's
the thing. If you then you pull out the Quran verse that says the non-Muslims will say to you in front of your face, and the interpretation, the translation is a very loose translation that I'm giving. The non-Muslims will say to your face, "We are your friends," but when they are alone amongst each other, they will say, "We were only joking. We're really their enemies." So, it's really all of that. Oh, see, they're saying that they like us, but they don't really like us.
But
they want to destroy us.
Why would you not leave that? Like, if your parents are preaching this to you, then why are they in this kuffar country in the first place? Just leave.
Exactly. It's the most ridiculous thing. They know that here they get so much. They get support, they get housing, they get education for their kids, and they know they get all of that. So that is why they stay here.
And yet they
it's
want
really
to.
Contradictory.
Yeah,
it's contradictory
makes no
to their
sense.
Beliefs. Yeah.
So does no one question this? Like the kids of the Salafis, aren't they just like, hey, let's go, let's move to Pakistan or wherever we're originally from?
What happens is that in reality, like, they all know that they believe that they should be leaving, but they don't leave because they just say, oh, we are weak. We need all the good stuff here. So they basically accepted themselves that they're hypocrites.
Oh.
Basically.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So then so being told UK is your enemy, and then how does it go to?
Well, then what happened is that the Afghanistan and Iraq wars happened, and then that all confirmed it to me. That was like, oh, see, the West is really at war with Islam. And what would happen is that the mosque I would attend, they would say things like, when the kuffar are trying to destroy Islam, they would put it in really generic terms. They'd always say, like, the West is trying to destroy Islam, and that the job of the Muslim is to fight jihad and to retaliate. If anyone attacks Islam, or attacks Muslims, we have to fight back. They would always put it in really generic terms like that so that they wouldn't get caught out. But everyone would get the message, and I would get the message as well. So,
but even as generic, that sounds dangerous. And
that is dangerous. That is very dangerous. But the British authorities wouldn't do.
See, that's a problem. I think that kind of that level of relativism has really created a lot of this, and always when I'm frustrated about Islamists in Canada or hardcore niqabis trying to push their niqabs onto courtrooms or whatever, I'm always like saying, please just look to the UK. Don't be a relativist about this stuff. This is like a slippery slope into dangerous territory. And I think the UK is so ahead in terms of having these conversations now because so much harm has been done.
Exactly. We're so messed up that we have to talk about it.
Yeah, I wish Canada would talk about it too, even though we are not even nearly experiencing what you guys have experienced. But it's still important to learn lessons from other people, other countries that have gone through it. And not, in Canada, there was a case of a niqabi woman who was celebrated by the liberals completely because the conservatives were against the niqab.
Yeah.
So the liberals celebrated her.
So liberals celebrating the niqab. That's interesting.
Yeah. It was so twisted. It was so frustrating for people from the Muslim community who are like liberals because we have no platform to speak from. If we try to be like, no, this is not your average Muslim, this is a bit extreme, then we're shouted down as bigots and racists.
Yeah. That is a problem. My mum wears the niqab, and she started wearing it when I was around 6. And I really didn't like it, and my mum noticed that I didn't like it. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, no disrespect to your mum, but I don't like it at all, and I think it's indicative of a troubling mindset. Not necessarily terrorism. That's not what I'm saying. People always get defensive and say, "Oh, you're calling them all terror." No.
Yeah.
There's different kinds of extremism that we need to acknowledge.
It's a spectrum. There's a spectrum from completely non-violent to really peace-loving, all the way to like, I want to kill you right now. And there's a spectrum amongst that, and there isn't like a defining line between non-violent extremism and violent extremism. It kind of blends into one another. That's how I feel like with my experience.
Yeah, and it all is a problem. Extremism is a problem, whether it's non-violent or whether it's violent is obvious, so everyone is opposed to that. But the non-violent types of extremism often fly under the radar.
Yeah, it's the non-violent extremists that create a culture and a climate that allows the violent extremists to like fester.
Spot on, absolutely, yeah. And so then you actually went to the stage of planning attacks, or just considering them in your head, or
thankfully it was just considering in my head, and I was nearly at that stage where I was about to plan, but thankfully I didn't get there.
What were you considering?
Basically, I wouldn't have considered a suicide attack, and this is interesting. The reason why I wouldn't have considered a suicide attack is because of my sexuality. Like, I didn't accept that it was a sexuality, but because of the sins because at the same time while I was considering this stuff, I was fooling around with guys.
Oh, so you didn't want to be sent to be judged by God?
Yeah, exactly. I didn't want to go to die whilst in that state.
But yet you wanted to kill other people for doing some other kinds of sins.
Exactly. So it was really ridiculous because on one level I really felt that it was my responsibility to do that. It's like, that might sound strange to you, but I felt as though it was my duty to kind of carry out this attack as a practicing Muslim, to kind of protect my brothers and sisters.
Wow, see, that does sound so strange to me. And even someone who grew up in I grew up in Saudi Arabia as a Muslim, I can't relate to that at all. Mm-hmm. I knew no one that was this extreme. Never.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't.
Right, but I hear these stories coming from England. Obviously, they must exist in Saudi too. But the thing is that as a Pakistani growing up in Saudi, we're kept quite separate from Saudis. Foreigners usually sometimes tend to live in compounds, as I did, and Saudis were not allowed by their own governments to mingle. They're not allowed to go into our schools, the foreign schools, because I don't know what their rationale is. Maybe their Western immorality will rub off. Like, I went to a British school. Saudis weren't allowed there.
Ah, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool. At least you went to a British school.
Yeah, I had a very secular education. Very much so. In Saudi. That's the thing. People don't...
That's brilliant.
People don't know that side of Saudi life, but the compound kids... I mean, it was like growing up in any part of the West, like a Western suburb. There was swimming pools, women bathing topless at our pools, women driving wearing shorts within the compound. It's only once we left it's like a reverse Amish compound. So
Ah,
in like this conservative
that's a
city,
brilliant way of putting it.
yeah, we have like this little oasis of do whatever the fuck you want. There was
Ah,
booze, parties, cinema, theater, Santa Claus parades.
wow. Okay, if I'm ever going to Saudi Arabia, I'm going to one of these compounds.
Yeah, you really should. It's a great time, but I mean, it's a complete artificial bubble. It's so
Hmm.
bizarre because you go out to do your grocery shopping and you're in typical Saudi Arabia. I had to wear a burqa when I left the compound, or an abaya as they called it. And it's such a contrast. It's a confused kind of existence, but you always have this escape. You're in the market, in your burqa, you're like, oh yeah, I'm just going to go back to my compound, so that's fine. Whatever.
So how did that feel like? So you were a Muslim at this stage. Like, how did you feel about like the Saudi form of Islam?
I never really thought about it much as a kid, except for the fact that I didn't like having my Quran teacher come, or I like ran away on my bike, or my parents were never really religious, never. So there wasn't really much praying going on in my house. My dad, he's a believer, but he's been a wonderful secular role model.
Yeah.
He was never impressed by the hijabs and the niqabs, and yeah.
See, I can't even begin to understand how that must be because my parents are just so religious.
See, it's so
Like,
weird. Like
yeah.
such a different experience growing
And
up Muslim.
I was brought up in Britain. You were brought
Right.
up in Saudi Arabia.
Exactly. Look at that. Like imagine just like on the surface telling someone about our stories. Oh, and now you'll meet a boy who was raised in England, and now you'll meet a girl who was raised in Saudi Arabia. Who do you think had the more conservative upbringing? Or, people will never guess you.
Yeah.
And it's funny because we did this in university. My friend had a marketing class, and she had she was giving a lecture on stereotypes or something, and she used me as a prop in one of her presentations. So I was like pretty gothed out and pierced and dog collared in university with like pink and purple spikes. And she had me stand outside her marketing class while she's giving this presentation. Okay, I'm going to bring in a friend of mine, and she was raised in Saudi Arabia. She's covered in black, and she's a woman. Can you picture in your mind what she looks like? And everyone's like, oh yeah, burqa, black. But no, I come in with like fishnets and goth boots,
Wow.
a black trench coat, and people are like, what? You were raised in Saudi Arabia? It was funny.
That's brilliant.
It was so much fun to just do that because people's jaws dropped to the ground.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I love that.
Yeah. Stereotypes, eh? Like you can't always rely on them.
But it's very foreboding that me being brought up in Britain, I could be in this be in this kind of that I was brought up in that mindset, and I wasn't the only one.
Yeah.
There are a lot of other people like that, and that is terrifying. That is extremely terrifying.
It's very terrifying. Terrifying for Britain. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it is. But it's like, how did we get to this stage? Why was no one doing? How did we let it get to this stage where people being born in Britain could be inculcated with this rubbish of the West being at war with Islam, that the UK is the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
That's
shocking.
Just terrifying.
I mean, it reminds me of that Charlie Hebdo editorial. Did you read that, where they talked about how did we end up here?
Yeah, I did. I read that editorial, actually, yeah.
Yeah, and they talk about this whole spectrum of Islamism, right? Like many people were upset about it, I guess,
Yeah,
because
a lot
they
of people were.
mentioned the guy with the prayer mark on his forehead and the niqabi woman. But I think this all, as you said, helps to create that environment.
It does.
And if you speak to...
That's not bigoted. That's just true.
Yeah, exactly. If you speak to the actual liberals in Pakistan, you will hear them being so true about hijabs and niqabs. Like how people are, even myself, I have to kind of watch what I say. People may not believe that, but, I don't want to empower the real anti-Muslim bigots.
Yeah, that's the issue. That is the issue.
Maybe I would have opposed it more if I was in Pakistan. I have no fear of like an anti-Muslim bigot there. It's just Muslim bigots. So it's easier to push back against Muslim bigotry. But yeah, I lost my train of thought.
This is the issue when it comes to Islam. I've seen both sides of it. So I was really like crazy, nuts, Salafi, Wahhabi, and I was really progressive and liberal. And I've experienced both sides of it. And I'll be honest with you, it's like they're like two completely different religions. Like it's like a completely different religion. They just share the name Islam.
I suppose, but they all defend the same vile verses, which makes me really angry.
That is the issue. That is the issue. Although there is some interesting stuff with like kind of like some Muslims actually starting to argue that maybe the Quran isn't the literal word of God, and that's actually happening in Britain.
Some are saying that we should just ditch hadith altogether, which is great, I think, as well. Like a nice step. That would be because a lot of the horrific stuff, virgin fondling and all kinds of nasty stuff is in the hadith. But yeah, so yeah, I think that was a fun little bit of our chat discussing our two experiences there. One last thing I wanted to ask you about is I remember you mentioning in one of your talks or the documentary, I don't remember, something about residual homophobia kind of impacting like relationships right now for you, or maybe at the time.
Yeah, that was actually in the documentary, and that's the thing. If you've been kind of taught, if you've had it drilled into your head since you were like before you even knew what sexual attraction was, that gay people are evil and that they're disgusting and that this is an abomination against God and it's unnatural, it's really hard to kind of shake those things off later in life. And I'm still kind of experiencing some of that kind of residual homophobia, although it has got a lot better since I did that documentary. And I think like if anyone's kind of listening to this and is going through the similar experience, I would say is what I would advise is like have a lot of gay friends. Try to be friends with a lot of gay people. Like admittedly, I myself kind of need to work on this on that side of things myself, but I think that helps a lot.
So it's like ex-homophobic gay Muslims or ex-Muslims need to work on being less homophobic by humanizing gay people.
Yeah. You humanize them by being friends with a lot of gay people.
And it's strange because you identify as that yourself, so it's strange to have to humanize it for yourself.
Exactly. It's kind of like this self-hatred that kind of grows.
No, and I think it's so awesome that you're honest about it and not sugarcoating it. I think it's so important for people to hear these types of things.
Yeah, exactly. People need to understand what happens. I mean, not least LGBT kind of Muslims and ex-Muslims themselves.
Yeah, so that's fantastic. And power to you, Sohail. I mean, you have just been such a lovely guest. I think I've had so much fun talking to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. That's really sweet of you.
Yeah, and anything that you want people to check out, anything you want to kind of send them to, or?
I don't think I have anything specific.
Any new documentaries?
You can follow me on Twitter. Okay, actually, I'm going to be giving a speech in Ottawa. I'm going to be speaking at the One Young World Summit. I'll be speaking with Majid Nawaz there, so I'll be like the former extremist guy speaking, because they're going to be speaking about global peace and security as well.
That's great. I mean, I think I hope you inspire millions of more people to ditch that way of thinking and just power to you. And I hope you just continue to flourish and just cast aside any horrible things that remain within, with you as memories of bad experiences. Yeah.
I feel that. Thank you.
Well, take care, Sohail, and hopefully people will enjoy this conversation as much as I did.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for having me on here.
No
It was an absolute pleasure.
Take care.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Polite Conversations. You can support this podcast by sharing the shit out of it, making some noise about it, or contributing via Patreon. patreon.com/nice mangoes. No E in mangoes. Also, you can follow me on Twitter at Nice Mangoes. If you want to make a one-time donation instead of a monthly Patreon one, you can do so via PayPal, nicemangoes.blog@gmail.com. Remember, no E in mangoes. If you've got an interesting story and would potentially like to be a guest, you can email me there too. A special thanks to Dylan Beck for theme music, sound, and production help.